Hey, Triple H finally got his King of the Ring win. 1 year after atoning for his naughty boy nonsense, the Connecticut Blue Blood got to wear the crown. He wouldn't go on to be regal for long, though. He was about to partake in even more naughty boy nonsense with DX on the horizon. 1997 was the quiet before the storm for WWE. The seeds of the Attitude Era had been planted, and it seemed like the company was holding its breath, waiting to explode into chaos. At Survivor Series, it did exactly that. So King of the Ring represents one of the last gasps of Vince's fake house steakhouse being officially family-friendly. I'm Plumpy from WhatCulture.com, and here are 10 fascinating facts about King of the Ring 97. Number 10, Bret Hart was supposed to face Shawn Michaels. Gosh, Bret and Shawn were big fans of being scheduled to face each other, then not doing so because they're deep personal issues. At WrestleMania 13, the main event was supposed to be Shawn Michaels dropping the strap to Bret Hart, but then instead he dropped his smile and ran away. Then a few months later, Hart and Michaels were booked again for King of the Ring. This time, Vince himself chose to cancel that match as the hatred between the Hitman and HB Shizzle, God, I hate that fucking nickname, that backstage heat had taken a turn for the ugly with the infamous Sunny Days promo where HBK not so subtly implied that Hart had been sleeping with Sunny, causing an actual backstage for-real fight between the two men. Vince called the match off because, well, Bret was probably going to kill Shawn. Number 9, Steve Austin was supposed to face Brian Pillman. Next up on the So Close But Didn't roulette wheel, another juicy rivalry that never made it to the pay-per-view. More than 6 months after the notorious Pillman's Got a Gun angle, that cheeky little ratings grabber, Pillman vs. Austin was penciled in for King of the Ring. However, with Bret vs. Shawn flushed down the toilet, Austin fought Michaels as part of a tag champs who didn't get a long deal, and Pillman was left being actually flushed down the toilet by Austin in a segment earlier in the night. I have only 2 questions: who installed that toilet cam, and why was it gold dust? Number 8, the seeds of the screwjob were planted the week of the show. Hart vs. Michaels would eventually happen on pay-per-view, of course, in Montreal, but no one ever talks about that. Vince screwed Bret and McMahon vs. Austin and so on and so on and so on, but the seeds of Hart walking out the company in the first place, they were planted the week before King of the Ring 97. It was during this week that Vince informed Bret that WWF was in dire financial straits and likely wouldn't be able to honor the giant money contract he just used to seduce Bret into staying. This would soon lead to Vince, tired of the backstage heat between Hart and Michaels, telling Bret that he was free to reopen negotiation with WCW, a gesture that Bret said broke his heart after so many years of service. Bret then did, WCW accepted, and the screwjob was born. Number 7, the tournament was meant to play out very differently. The semi-finals of the King of the Ring tournament played out with Hunter Triple Hursley Helmsley H defeating Ahmed Johnson, with Mrs. Mankind's baby boy defeating Jerry Lawler, before the guy who would eventually become the biggest dad in wrestling downed Mankind in a violent final. As it turned out, Johnson was the only one of the 4 that was originally scheduled to be in the semi-finals. The Wrestling Observer reports that pay-per-view commercials taped weeks in advance promoted Johnson in a semi-final match with Vader, while on the other side of that bracket, Goldust would have faced Savio Vega. Instead, Vega lost to Mankind in the opening round, whilst Goldust lost on a cheap finish to Lawler. As for Vader, his circumstances were the biggest reason for the overhaul. Number 6, Vader's injuries took him out of the tournament. Vader was taken out of King of the Ring pretty much by one man, Ken Shamrock. Look at Ken Shamrock, yes, that makes sense. At In Your House, A Cold Day in Hell, the 2 men had a no-holds-barred match, and since neither men were known for pulling punches, they unloaded on each other during the course of the 13-minute brawl, with Vader getting the worst of it. Along with assorted leg injuries, Vader's nose was broken in 4 places, and he suffered a broken septum. The breathing difficulties sidelined the Mastodon, and so Triple Dad was reinserted into the tournament despite losing by DQ to Ahmed Johnson in round 1. The storyline explanation: Helmsley didn't know that a DQ could knock him out of the tournament and threatened to sue WWE, so they put him back in. Number 5, WWE ran a pre-show angle to get Mankind cheered. The new direction that WWE was taking in 1997 was Grace from Heaven for Mick Foley. A few years earlier, the hair-pulling weirdo would have been treated like a dead-brained goon or a Damien Demento ludicrous freak. In a product growing increasingly family-unfriendly, his style of mania fit right in. In the spring of 1997, Foley took part in a series of sit-down interviews with Jim Ross that were functionally work shoots, showing the true passion for the business that Foley had. It was a gradual face turn despite Mankind working heel on pay-per-views. Before King of the Ring went on the air, WWE wanted to ensure that he would be cheered that night because he was working the final, so they had him cut a face promo dark in front of the crowd, featuring him getting a verbal dressing down from Jerry Lawler. Number 4, Vince exaggerated the size of the crowd. No, really? Well, that's f***ing unprecedented, he said, wearing the sarcasm hat. Sitting at ringside for the 1997 King of the Ring, Vince McMahon, still the babyface MC with the dollar G, spoke with pride as he talked about the capacity crowd that was on hand for the event. Several times throughout the night, McMahon made mention of the capacity crowd, not so subtly implying a sellout. In truth, only 9,312 fans were present in a venue that is capable of holding 15,000 for a wrestling show. The 1994 Royal Rumble took place in the same building and housed 14,500 fans, so capacity crowd is a silly naughty no-no. Number 3, Jerry Lawler appeared at the ECW arena the night before. The working relationship between WWE and ECW in 1997 produced some truly surreal television, whether it was Paul Heyman, Rob Van Dam and others showing up on Raw, or WWE performers popping up at ECW events. Lawler had been vocal in his anti-ECW sentiment on WWE television for months, calling it extremely crappy wrestling, ha hardy 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 ha. Then ECW held their WrestlePalooza event in Philadelphia's ECW arena the night before King of the Ring 97, and it was there that Lawler would appear in front of a crowd that almost pooed themselves with pure hate. As Lawler ran down the ECW fans and their promotion, Van Dam recalls the heat was incredible and that Lawler got the out of the building as soon as the angle was over. Once safe, Lawler made the 270-mile journey to Providence in order to take part in the King of the Ring tournament. Number 2, it was Sid's last WWE pay-per-view match. The real-life Sid Eudy had an unusual career in professional wrestling, getting huge pushes wherever he went based on his look and presence, and then disappearing from companies before you could say scary perm. In all, the master and ruler of the world had 3 different tenures in WWE, all of which lasted roughly a year or less, but involved 2 WrestleMania main events and 2 WWE championships. At the 1997 King of the Ring, Sid partnered with the Legion of Doom to face Owen Hart, Davey Boy Smith, and Jim Neidhart in a mostly forgettable 6-man tag in the undercard. The finish came with Hart pinning Sid after a diving sunset flip. Sid then performed in several matches in the week after the pay-per-view and made a brief appearance on an episode of Raw the following month before, as is his custom, disappearing from the company altogether. And number 1, Austin worked through serious neck injuries. At SummerSlam 1997, a few months following King of the Ring, Steve Austin would suffer a near-catastrophic neck injury when Owen Hart held him too low on a sit-out tombstone. We all know about that. Many have credited this as the start of the neck problems that would eventually hound Stone Cold from the ring. In actual fact, this was far from Austin's first brush with spinal issues. Turns out that at King of the Ring, retirement was actually a very real option for the Rattlesnake. Before the show, Austin had been apparently told by doctors that his existing neck issues could be the start of a more dire problem and recommended that Stone Cold retire. Austin sought a second opinion, and the second doctor said he could continue working, though in considerable pain, and that his problem stemmed from severe erosion of the vertebrae. By this time, Austin was the hottest rising star in the WWE and decided to stick with the pain. It's difficult to imagine how WWE would have turned out had Austin called it quits after consulting that first doctor.
Weast your pie holes, you dirty, sweaty marks. You think you're a smart mark, do you? A smart is it? Then answer me this simple wrestling question. Who was the only member of the NWO to never have worked for WCW? No, you're wrong again, because you're a sweaty mark. It was Shawn Michaels. Improve your knowledge and test your bastard self with the new WhatCulture wrestling trivia game, available now at shop.whatculture.com. Sweaty Mark.